Okay, so we have a couple things on the agenda, and I see that we have a few guests here. Do you want to keep the agenda the way it is, or do you want to make changes so that the folks who are going to talk about the administrator contract can be first? Oh, Carolina has come in. Do we have any comments on that? Okay, let's just keep it the way it is then. Maybe it would be good for everybody to, I assume you can hear me. Is that right, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So the first item on the agenda, we've called the meeting to order. It's about 7:01. We're going to approve the minutes of January 11th. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes? Anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I do, Carolina.
Okay, Carolina and
This is
Motion to
Liza.
approve.
I'll second.
okay, Carolina and Liza. Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes of January 11th? Looks like that's good. Is there anybody who is opposed? Okay, any abstentions? All right, then I think that we can all say that the minutes are approved. A few weeks ago, actually before Christmas, we talked about what the role of this committee is. Some folks were concerned about whether there's a hierarchy of responsibility, that the Board of Finance sort of tells us all what to do and we abide by what they want to do. And I also had some concerns from some folks who were worried that we were being, wasting time on discussing things that were not really our purview. So Peter suggested that I reach out to Frank Kemp, who is on the, who's head of TGS&A, Town Government Service and Structure and Administration. I did that, but he said he wasn't the person, and he suggested Seth, who suggested that I join a call with Wayne Fox, who is the town attorney. And I wanted to say that I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, I did participate in this call, and I asked several questions, and I wanted to share with you what I learned, if that's okay. Is that okay with everybody? All right. So
Great. Thank you. Great.
As to the question of whether there's a hierarchy with the Board of Finance kind of at the top or near the top, no, there is not. They do have the right to set parameters. That is part of their job, and parameters on what is reasonable. But essentially what we have is a gray area, not a line in the sand. And the whole budget process should be considered a debate or a discussion about what each group thinks is appropriate for responsible spending. So the Board of Ed, as we all know, has line item control. And if the Board of Finance makes a cut, the Board of Ed can reallocate money to reflect their priorities. Even if the Board of Finance or the RTM were to make a major cut, the Board of Ed could still reallocate. Neither the Board of Finance nor the RTM has the right to inhibit the education of the children of the town. So as for, drastic draconian cuts, that's really not advised. Any questions so far? Okay,
Interesting.
so that takes care, that's pretty much, where I think we all kind of have, in the end, that's probably what we all think. But anyway, at least we have it confirmed by the town attorney. Now, as to the question, what's the RTM Education Committee's role if we want to set objectives or set goals? How can we be influential without micromanaging and interfering with the Board of Ed? So the RTM Education Committee has the responsibility for establishment, maintenance, and operation of the town public education facilities and programs, including all related matters of administration, finance, and personnel. The RTM votes on all contracts, they vote on the school budget, they vote on additional funds when they're needed. So we have the obligation to understand fully the issues as they pertain to the budget and to communicate to the RTM about the budget. No question is a bad question. We certainly all know better than to get involved in a personal agenda. Example, my kid didn't make the team, so let's try to get rid of that coach. That kind of stuff, or even stuff that's less extreme than that. I think that we all know that, there are going to be things that are on the edge, and we'll flesh that out when it happens. So that's pretty much in a nutshell, what I learned. Does anybody have any questions? I know that I got an email, or some of us got an email from Peter today, which I think kind of reflects a lot of what I learned. So, you know, I think congratulations to Peter for being in line with the town attorney and with anybody else who, you know, has questions that, you know, brought us to this point. So does anybody want to make any comments?
I want to make a comment. I'm going to describe a scenario that we went through last year very quickly, and that was my only point that I was trying to make as far as the hierarchy and what I meant. And I think we may run into it again. And the question is whether this is the way we want to do things in this town. Maybe this is the right answer, the system we have. But here's the scenario, right? 4%.
Who is speaking?
This is Peter.
This is Peter.
Yeah, Barbara.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Okay.
We have a 4%.
Proceed, please.
We have a 4% budget increase, right? That, and this is, let's just play through it a little bit. And we all agree, maybe we do, maybe we don't, but at the end of the day, Board of Education thinks is the right budget, not only to pay our teachers the contractual wages, 2.5%, 3%, but also to improve the quality of the education, right? We as RTM and our committee likes that idea too. So we say 4% makes sense, right? But that's not the budget we're gonna see when we meet in June in RTM. We're gonna see a budget that's gonna be a Board of Finance budget. That budget could say 2.5%. Maybe because they think the wealth of the town is not as big, you know, we don't want to increase taxation. Maybe they don't think the extra $8 million in general fund is enough. They could have a different scenarios. And obviously, they are neighbors and they have the same interests as we do. But these are 7 people who could be who could have totally different idea than Board of Education, than RTM as a whole. And when we sit there in June, as RTM, we have 2 options, right? We can either approve that budget or not. We want 4%, 7 people on Board of Finance at 2%, right? If we say no, we don't like that, what happens? And that was really the core of the question. And I appreciate Mr. Fox saying that this is all, you know, there's no hierarchy, but here's what happens. If we say no, we don't like it, the budget reverts to last year's budget. That means the 2.5%, 3% increase in salaries will force out some programs to be cut, right? So we, by definition, will say yes, even if it's not the budget, not the amount, anywhere close where we think that satisfies the education needs of our kids, right? So here we are. But we're going to say yes, despite what despite our disagreement. This is what happened last year. I'm not saying it's going to happen again. It's unusual if it happens, but that was my question, whether we all should sit in RTM, 100 people, and listen to the 7 people on Board of Finance to tell us how to do this. Right? We obviously have choices, right? We can roll them out next year, or we can say this is the system we have, or we can change the system, right? And I don't know where I stand on it, right? Maybe it's worked like this for 100 years, and maybe this is the right way to do it. But that was my concern, that 7 people, we can say they don't have a line item veto, they do. We can all disagree on stuff, but at the end of the day, they will determine the size of the budget. Maybe that's their charge, right? But let's just agree what our charge is, and let's just know that our, where we bring in this role, where we belong, right? And it's clear to me, unless somebody tells me I'm wrong, is that there's a hierarchy. It's unsaid hierarchy, we all can debate stuff like that, but at the end of the day, Board of Finance will determine this because we have inherently inflationary budget, because of 70% of our budget is people. And we pay people 2-3%. We pay them 2-3% more a year. All right. So anyway, that's all I have. And the conversation should be whether this is the best system or not. Maybe it's not. This is not the forum, but that's how I thought about it. Thank you.
Would anybody like to comment? Did anyone find the information that we got from Mr. Fox helpful?
Yes.
I don't think. Okay. Right. Peter, I don't know exactly, I don't think it's as bad as all that. I mean, I think the Board of Finance is within its rights to set some parameters. And I hope that last year was unusually unpleasant. And it's not always like that. So, what do you want to say?
Claire, last thing I want to say on this. I agree with you. They should set parameters, but parameters should be driven by the wealth of this town. And the only way to determine wealth of this town is the property values, right? The grand list, right? That's how they determine, right? If we suddenly have 5% a year inflation in houses, frankly, people can afford 5% more, taxes, right? Or maybe they should say, listen, we don't need that much in the general fund. But I'm not sure they should really decide whether, and I remember the presentation by Mr. Zagrodsky, 2.5 we're okay with, and then you have to sell us on the additional stuff. If you look at the state of the town, that's how I understood it. So that's the only difference. I think I would like them to talk about whether we can withstand 4% inflation, 4% increase in budget or not, and what do they base it on, right? And not about, and I saw some of the questions they had, and I'm not sure that should be their purview to ask Board of Education about these questions. But anyway, that's my view.
Well, I mean, I think we could go back to say that, this whole process that starts in January and takes until the end of June or the middle of June to resolve, it is all a time for debate, a time to exert some influence if we have some, and certainly the Board of Ed is going to do the same thing. So I think, it's not over yet, and I think we still have a chance, and I think the Board of Finance members are aware that they have to be elected and that they are going to respond to the town. I think as one of our members pointed out, not everybody here has school children, so they do want to keep tax increases reasonable. That's not unusual. And so we'll just have to do our best within the, the guidelines that we have. And I think that, as I said, no question is a bad question, and, within reason. And I think that, maybe we can help convince them that these expenses are reasonable. I mean, we have a vote too about whether the expenses here that are being presented are reasonable. So with that, does anybody have any questions or comments? Anne?
I was just going to say, I do agree with Peter that and just to step back, I've been on this committee for a while, and obviously, Clara, you have as well. This is a delicate dance between various town bodies, right? And there is room for discussion, there is room for debate, there is room for, priorities in different ways. And I agree with Peter that the Board of Finance can offer some guidance, but I agree that telling us, telling the Board of Ed, you can have a 2.5% increase, and you have to convince me otherwise, I think is draconian in the way it was presented, and a bit arrogant. But I do think we do need to all work together. We all are. I think everybody wants really good schools. I mean, one of the elements of this is the grand list, as Peter said, and we all know how many new houses have been built and how many people are moving into town. And so the grand list is bound to be bigger for next year.
Does anyone have, I'm sorry, I was just we just spent so much time talking about what someone said at a meeting, and I know I watched the meeting. Does anyone have a quote, like the transcript for what was actually said? I mean, I just feel like we're just spending far too much time talking. The one where the Board of...
You mean what John Jagotsky said?
Correct, like
last
word for
year?
word. Is that because what?
What year are you talking about?
Last year.
The one that Anne was just talking about, the meeting that Anne she paraphrased him, and I'm sorry, I just don't think that was an accurate paraphrase. So that's why I was just...
It's recorded,
Right, which is why I was asking, because it is recorded. Exactly. I just, I think again, somebody said something, and I think it's just been misconstrued.
I think that's why words are important, and maybe that's not what he meant, but a fair number of people interpreted it that way. So if he feels otherwise, he should say as such, but that's why you really need to be careful with every word that comes out of your mouth, because that's what I heard too, quite frankly. And when he said it, I was like, whoa.
But I guess, Teresa, I'm just like, and sorry, maybe our agenda is just to talk about what somebody said at a Board of Finance meeting. I'm just like, why are we still talking about this?
I don't think. No, wait a minute. I think that what we have to say is it's on the agenda that we're going to talk about the Education Committee's role. And I think you came in a little bit late and maybe didn't hear what I said when I started out was that at some folks, Peter and a couple of people suggested, that we look into what our role really is, whether we're wasting time here. And so I was invited to be on a call with Mr. Fox, the town attorney, and I did report to the group what I learned. And that's where the discussion started. Okay. And it doesn't mean that it should end there. It just means that then folks have gotten involved in trying to respond to what I said. I'll be glad to go back over it with you because I don't want to.
Don't do it. Not on this call. Not on this
No,
call. Sorry,
but
sorry,
Ann,
thanks.
if you want, let's let Ann finish because she was talking, and maybe you could go back, Ann, and let us know. Did you mean that John Zagrodzky's comments this year, or was it last year at the end of the budget season?
Well, I think both. And I want to step back and say, reiterate what I said before. This is a collaborative effort between various town bodies, right? And it is the Board of Finance's job to set the mill rate and to make sure that the finances of the town are in good shape. We have to maintain our AAA rating, all of that kind of stuff. And we all want that to work, but I would like them to work a little more collaboratively with us. And I don't think that we have to bow down to the Board of Finance for whatever they say that they want. I think we all need to work together. That's that, you know. And to Peter's point, you know, how this all works, it's not super clear. The hierarchies, to me, there's no, it's more everybody coming together, but the RTM is the budget making authority in terms of voting the money from the budget. So.
Okay, thank you. Peter, did you have your hand up?
I have the last thing I want to say because we have Duke and everybody, Mr. Adley, Dr. Adley on the phone. We should probably move on. Ed is right. My only point was this is not about the words that Mr. Zagrodzky said. This is from the presentation, Ed, that you know there was the state of town where basically it's you know the guidance, right? He's giving guidance to the Board of Education, and he says 2.5% is sort of baseline. I understand there's fixed cost that goes up like that, and for the rest, you have to make a clear and compelling case. He's right? But what I'm saying, what I'm trying to differentiate is, I would be thinking he should be determining taxes based on the wealth of town and not on his assessment whether somebody's making clear or compelling case. That's the only point I want, and I think we should move on now. I think that's
okay. All right, we will. Okay. Did anyone else? Nick, are you unmuted?
Yeah.
Did you want to comment?
I just had a question.
Okay.
You know, I think Ann just said that the RTM is really the budget making authority, but then I guess, you know, Peter and maybe the quandary is that we're not able to recommend an actual budget, but we can only say yes or revert to last year. Is that sort of the crux of the matter and something we want to change, I guess?
We can't increase the budget. We can decrease it, but we cannot increase it as the RTM.
But can we like decrease it a little bit, or can we only say go to last year?
I think that we can decrease it a little bit, but
We can decrease it by
check
a
that.
dollar amount, right, Clara?
I think so. I'm going to check that. Okay, just to be sure. But if the budget does not pass in the RTM, then it reverts back to what it was the year before. If the budget were to be voted down, I think that the Board of Finance is the group who can say reduce the budget by 200,000 or a particular amount. And the RTM as a group, if they were to vote down the budget, then it would go back to being what it was the year before.
And I guess an issue, the hierarchy is that we don't get involved until Board of Finance, and so that's the number that we're starting with is what.
Well, I think the Board of Finance is making a recommendation. I mean, I did ask about a hierarchy when I spoke to the town attorney, and he said there's no hierarchy. They do have the right to set parameters. They do have the right to say, you know, limit the budget to a certain amount, but then the whole process involves a sort of a debate or discussion of why that number might not be enough. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay.
Okay, I will get back to you on exactly, you know, the question about whether we can reduce it a little bit as RTM members. Okay, any other comments?
Well, only the question about line item is part of this discussion. We cannot take a line item.
No, that's correct. That is absolutely correct, that only the Board of Ed can address the line items in the operations budget. That's all been confirmed, okay? Anyone else want to comment? Okay, well, I think it's probably time to move on to the next agenda item. And the folks from the Board of Ed and Administration have been patiently waiting. So we need to consider and take action on the contract between the Darien Board of Education and the Darien Administrators Association. And I wonder if Mr. Deneen, would you like to give a little bit of a summary, or perhaps one of the administrators who was involved?
Thank you, Clara. Yes, we've got Dr. Adley. I believe we have
Oh, okay.
Marge Skyon, head of HR. I was on the negotiation committee for this also. And I think Alan did a good draft of kind of the overview. So I'll let Dr. Adley and Mrs. Skyon pick it up from here.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good.
Can
Yes.
everybody hear Dr. Adley?
Yeah, we're good. We're good, I think. Okay. Thank you. And again, on behalf of particularly our children and our families, thank you for all of your advocacy and support and work that you do for the children of Darien. They don't always see it behind the scenes, but you play a very important role, which you just discussed. So thank you for your support over the last couple of years, indeed for many years prior to this, and we look forward to your continued support. So we have about 33 administrators, and this is the contract for 2021 through 2024. And really, this year really highlighted the importance, not only just of our teachers, but our entire staff, and that includes our administrative team. We're blessed to have a tremendous team, a tremendously dedicated group of administrators, and that was particularly important this particular year because you saw the fruits of their labor in action as they planned for what has been a very challenging year in this pandemic. This was fairly straightforward in terms of it wasn't complex in terms of a lot of contract language change or otherwise. So the contract essentially is 6.32 over 3 years. It's the wage increase every year is 2%, 2%, 2%. The prior years were 2.25%, 2.25%. So it came down from the prior years. The insurance is essentially the same, 21 remains the same. It goes up to 22 in the third year. And again, there's no major language changes. There is a grandfathering of an insurance buyout. If you don't take insurance, there was a benefit of $1,000 that has been removed from the contract. Marge can talk about any if she wants to talk about any language changes or otherwise, but it was an amicable process, and I think this is a very fair agreement on behalf of the town for a group of very dedicated administrators who are very proud to be here and to do the work that they do. But Mark, do you want to give any historical perspective?
No, I think Dr. Adley is right. We have a good working relationship with this group, and so we didn't need to make really any major language changes.
There is one comment about a tuition change, and that just talks to the ability to do some online courses that qualify, which was the same in the teacher contract.
Yes.
Would you like to take some questions, Dr. Adley? And
yes, we may.
Yes, I am. Okay. Does anyone have questions about the contract for our guest, Peter?
I have questions. They are not in order of importance, just as I went through it. But I know there's 33 people covered by this contract, the administrator's contract, and there are a couple carved out right on page 1. And I guess somebody could help me with the history why they are carved out, like you, Dr. Adley, for example. You know, I guess there's a different contract.
Yes.
Maybe Marge help me out. Why is that?
Marge, you want to fill in about who gets contract?
Right. So Dr. Adley by statute is not a member of the administrators union and the assistant superintendent. So those are statutory reasons that they're not included. And the rest of the language, the last contract that we did, we were at the same time getting approval from the town bodies for the department shares. So the language was included in an MOU, which you can find on our website, but it was included this time in the actual body of the contract.
Thank you. A couple others, but let others speak as well. I know that some of these administrators work 223 days, some of them work 187 days. And I wasn't clear about the vacation setup, but all of them have five weeks, regardless whether they work 220 or 187.
No, so the only group that has vacation days are the 12-month administrators. So the 223 is what's left after you subtract the vacation days. It's the net days they work for us.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I noticed that section 3 has this discussion about the administrative performance that's deemed less than satisfactory and what happens in those situations. Does this happen in our district? And how often? Maybe over the last 10 years? Just ballpark. Has it happened? Unsatisfactory performance.
This is my 6th year in Darien, and it hasn't happened since I've been here.
I got it. Thank you. Now this section 5.5 waiver of coverage. I noticed, and Dr. Adley just mentioned it, but it seems like if the family or the administrator is not insured by us, we pay them $1,000 one-time payment or monthly? Or what? I wasn't clear about the language. Sorry.
It's a one-time payment made in June.
Okay. Thank you.
Not monthly.
Correct.
Just to clarify. Okay. All right. Do you have more questions, Peter?
I thought I'd talk more. Sorry about that, but hopefully it helps others to go through it. But others, tell me if you want to take a different order.
Let's just pause a little bit. Does anyone else have questions?
I have a
No?
comment.
Okay.
May I comment? The negotiations.
Yeah, go ahead.
They've always been professional. They've always been right on target, and I want to thank you again.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, Peter. How about? Did I see Duke's hand up or Teresa? No. Okay. Peter, go on.
Section 12 discusses the tuition reimbursement of $5,000. Do administrators use it? I hope they do. I just wondered whether there's interest for that kind of help.
By the time people are administrators, they don't use it as much as the teachers do. But if someone wanted to go for their doctorate, they could potentially. Again, since I've been here, no one has used that account.
Okay.
You say no one has used the education account?
No one has asked for reimbursement for graduate credits since I've been here.
Okay. They may have used that already. Yeah. So the last two ones. The position elimination in Article 8 talks about some kind of bumping system there, and I wasn't sure how that works. If you could just walk us quickly through it, please.
So that provision was the subject of much discussion in the previous negotiations, and we made sure that if a position is eliminated, that they could only bump someone for whom they were qualified to do the position. So that's why you see those positions set out like that. For example, a department chair in math and science couldn't be a department chair in English and or social studies. So that's why it's set out the way it is.
I noticed this doesn't contemplate this section, the new potential assistant principal, correct? For the special education, if the current budget as it's contemplated by the budget.
So if an assistant, no, it does not. Although assistant principals are covered, assistant principals anyone who's not covered by the specific language of that bumping would bump into a teaching position.
Yeah. And this is the last question, and maybe the one that's really important here, which is the Article 10 performance evaluation, and that section is kind of short and talks about how can people defend themselves. But can you walk us through how the evaluations work? Maybe called middle school or high school level, or elementary school principal, who they evaluate by, how often?
I does not have enough to do. Sure.
Okay, can you answer that, Marge?
Wait, Dr. Adley, did you want to talk about evaluation? Or?
Sure. The administrators, all the principals, I'm directly responsible. I'm the direct line of supervision and evaluation. Underneath that, the principal would essentially evaluate the assistant principals, and we have department chairs under our director, assistant superintendent, but also with input from the principals. So I'm the direct line of supervision for the principals. At the start of the year, they have to set goals with me, and we have mid-year reviews and observations throughout the year, and a final year's summative evaluation, essentially.
And that's why these goals are sort of student outcome driven? Are they improving tests? You know, how the cost that they control those, or how is there five goals, 10 goals? How does it, you know, how does that work?
Peter, it's only a couple of goals in this particular year. For instance, the State Department issued a lot of flexibility to schools. So the idea around you could set achievement goals, but there was a lot of flexibility around social emotional learning, and actually, to be honest with you, the preparations for the experiences that we're providing here under COVID. It's just a different year, but ordinarily you would be correct, yes.
Can I ask you, are you thinking that there were, what was the impact of COVID on these negotiations?
What was the impact of COVID on these?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems that it's an odd time to be doing the negotiation, but I mean, were there things that came up because of COVID that you felt that were included?
So not specifically in this, Margie, think of something there, but it was the context, right? In some ways, it was the bigger context within which they were negotiated. That is certainly the case. And I would say, Clara, I hope you don't mind me saying it, but just it was particularly a time to value our administrators. And I know sometimes administrators is like a lightning rod, and that's understandable. That's the case. But without good administrators and exemplary administrators, we wouldn't be doing the good work that we're doing, particularly in this particular year.
Okay, thank you. This is a different question. Could you talk a little bit about the sabbatical section? I think on page 10 you address it. I guess some administrators benefit from sabbaticals. Is that still part of the contract?
So the sabbatical leave position has been eliminated. Administrators can request professional leave for periods of time. No one has really done it, and it would be a hardship on the district if they did, because administrators are, difficult to find. So it's there for something extraordinary, but again, since I've been here, no one has requested that kind of leave.
Okay, so nobody is requesting sabbaticals, so that's why, but the leave has been taken out of the contract.
That's
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess another question would be the total 3-year increase, $350,382. Is that the cost to the town?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what we would be interested in. You know, for the RTM, they would want to know what the cost to the town is of this contract.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. 350, 382.
Yep.
Right. Okay. And the last.
Does that include the health insurance?
That's the salary.
Okay, I just want
to.
I was just confused. This is Liza. It seemed like the health insurance premiums were high. I don't have experience negotiating employment contracts, but it seemed like a large increase.
What do you say? That's what it is. I guess there's not much you can do about that. Is that right?
So the premiums are determined by our claim experience with our healthcare provider. So the worse our claim experience is, the higher our premium shares are, or our premium cost is. And then the rates that you see is just what's negotiated in terms of the share that the employee pays.
But the amount that the employee is paying has increased. It increases over the time of the contract, doesn't it?
Correct.
So you are seeing an increase in the amount of money that the administrator pays for the health insurance. Is that right?
Yep. So last year, for example, it went up a little over 8%. We're assuming about 7.95 for next year.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay,
and one. Okay, go ahead.
I want to make sure I heard it properly. This contract, the escalation in salaries are lower than last contract. Is it correct?
The percent general wage increase is lower than last contract.
Okay, so if that's lower, where did we give something, or did we?
So part of it is just the climate of COVID. If we look around the state, administrator contracts aren't increasing by quite as much because obviously the economy hasn't been quite as good. So the 2% is what this contract is. In the past, like Dr. Adley had mentioned, it's the 2.25%, 2.25%, and 2.5%. It's really a product of the economic environment we see.
You're also starting with a higher base anyway, right? So actual notional dollars is probably not less.
Correct.
That's true.
Okay. So really it's flat.
If someone wanted to see the previous contract, where would they find it?
That previous contract is still online at darrieMPS.org under the HR department and information for employees and union contracts.
And will it stay there for a while? Or
Yes.
I guess at some point you're going to replace. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I see that there was a section about the need to let the administrator know by a certain date, I think it was February 1st, if there was going to be a change. Was there ever any thought of asking administrators to let the district know if they are leaving the district, if they are a building administrator or building principal, that they not leave the district kind of in the lurch when they sometimes give their notice in April or May? Did that ever come up that you could ask someone, ask this level of an administrator to give the district adequate notice if you're leaving, so that the district isn't left with having to hire an interim, at a very difficult time?
So it hasn't come up in negotiations, and oftentimes those situations are difficult to manage. I know Dr. Adley has worked with people who have resigned to go to other districts to lengthen the transition period as much as possible, but I don't think it would be anything that we would be able to negotiate into the contract.
You wouldn't? Oh, okay. I do think it's too bad when an interim has to come in and not too much gets done, in those years. Other questions about the contract? Okay. Any questions about where you would get information if you wanted to learn more? We know that it's under HR in the Darien Public Schools website. I think you've covered everything pretty well. And I think that maybe we are ready to vote. Does anybody have any questions before we vote? Okay, can we have a motion to approve the contract between the Darien Board of Education and the Darien Administrators Association?
It's Teresa. I'll make a motion.
Okay, Teresa moved, and a second?
I second, Carolina.
I would second it.
Okay, both Ann and Barbara seconded. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, can you see? Meg, can you see all the hands? Okay, all right, put your hands down.
Meg, this is
All
Lucy.
those-
I'm going to yes.
Okay,
Well,
all those,
you videos. So everyone whose faces I can see had their hands up.
okay, is there anyone opposed? I don't see anybody, do you? No, okay, and
This
any
is Ed.
abst-
I'm in favor of it, but the video's off, so I'm just saying I support it.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we have everybody. Is anybody an abstention? I don't see any abstentions either, so I think it appears that it's unanimous. Okay, thank you all.
Can I just
Congratulations.
ask a quick question, Clara? Meg,
Sure.
can you see us on your screen? Like, I only see 6 people at a time, so when we're like all raising our hands, do you see us?
Again, I can send a screenshot of what I see. I see everybody.
Okay.
So, and you all
Okay.
Can you see me? Can you see me? I'm on the phone.
No, I can't see
Caller
a number
two.
of you.
Teresa,
Yeah,
at the
no, I
top,
can't.
you can change to view everyone.
Okay, I think our administrators, I don't know if you want to stay for our next discussion or not. We're going to talk about the questions that were answered about the 2021-22 budget. We have gotten some answers. I think we probably have some other questions. I don't know if you all want to discuss that this evening. Any further information you want about any of the questions that have been answered?
I would say, Clara, in the interest of everyone's time on the administrative side, as you go through the questions, I would just, any additional questions that come up, just forward them over to us.
Okay, I don't know if I'm going to go through them one by one, but
Sure.
yeah, I think in the interest of letting the folks go, because I think we'll be meeting again before this is all done with. So I think that if they want to go and, join another meeting, that would be just fine with me. Does anybody have any parting words for the administrators? Dr. Adley, Mrs. Sion, Mr. Rudel? Okay, thank you all. Thank you. I think it made a big difference that you were here.
Thank you very much for all of your work. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Stay well. Good night. Okay, so for the education committee meeting members and the other folks who are still here, did you want to go through these questions again, or do you want to just let us know what ones you might want to ask more about?
I think the conversation has been excellent. They've been excellent questions and excellent responses. There might be some more, but this is really good this year. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Barbara, for all that you add to the discussion. The questions were answered in the minutes of the last Board of Ed meeting, I think, which was on January 19th. There was a question about the Darien High School eliminating the co-teaching and, you know, using the lab. Is everybody happy with that question, the way it was answered?
They are the professionals. They need to work it out, and then they'll tell us what they're doing.
Okay, they did not answer the part about whether the course would change, but, you know, I guess
that's true.
That's all
But
right.
you know what, Clara, the Board of Ed members, it looks like they're going to try and add that back in anyway.
You
For
think,
last
I guess,
week's meeting.
And
Well,
Clara,
we-
this is Duke. If people need to get it or can't find it, we'll find it. But the last Board of Ed meeting there was a very spirited conversation about this, and Dr. Adley and Mrs. Dunn and the other high school administrators gave a pretty detailed presentation on the pros and cons with taught and co-teaching. So if anyone has seen that, I think it's a good read. It lays it out very nicely in a deck.
Yeah, I did see it. I think, yeah, I did see that. And I think the other folks, if you're interested, you know, we'll make sure you get, you know, the link to the video.
Ooh.
Okay. There was a question about Middlesex, what the breaking point was to decrease a team, about bubble, you know, if a bubble class comes in, how do you add, you know, can you eliminate the folks after the bubble moves to the system? We talked also about the lunch monitor and whether the money would be better spent on getting parent volunteers. I mean, I'm trying to find out whether you all want to pursue any of these questions that seem to have been answered. Are you happy with the answers? Do you want to move on?
If I can just mention to that particular question, we can ask them directly. It's 30,000 per school. I just want to make sure, you know, now it starts being you know, it's 150,000, right?
Well, that's a good question. It's 32,000 per school?
I think that's what's in the budget. Anyway, you can ask them whether, I appreciate it's easier that way. I appreciate that parents are not as reliable and other issues, but it's a lot of money, right?
Yeah, it is. But then I guess they're saying that a paid person is more reliable. I think that's what they're trying to say.
Clara?
Yeah.
In the last meeting, I had said that $32,000, I didn't think it was a lot of money because, and to worry about 32,000 was just silly. I did not realize it was for all the school and offline. Peter corrected me. So we just have to make that clear, which Peter just did.
You mean it's not 32,000?
No.
It's 32,000 times 5.
Right, exactly.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, if that's wrong, I hope somebody from the
I don't know.
from the board of ed let us know. Okay, so you think that that's a pretty hefty amount of money. Okay, we also asked about, there were people who, even some of the teachers had commented about not having enough para help. It appears that the paras are assigned by the principals, so that's another case where the professional involved is making the choice. We talked about open choice, the program, and the need to make sure these people are supported. I know that at the last Board of Ed meeting, I think there was a point made to have 2 people. No, not open choice. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Not open choice, but the teacher in residence, to have 2 of them rather than just the 1. So that would be a kind of a support in itself.
Claire, can we talk about the teacher in resident program just very quickly? Is there a way we can get some information on who is going to be responsible for the hiring practice for those rules? Because I think it's a very good program. The idea behind it, the spirit of it is awesome. I'm just concerned that, you know, and I've noticed before, and apologies if I sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but I kind of feel like there's no visible minorities on the Board of Ed. There hasn't been in the last 30 years. So in terms of, I'm not going to question someone's professional qualifications to hire someone, but I would be curious to know if they have any exposure in areas where there is a more diverse demographic, because I think that's important if you want to actually make the most out of this program. So it's an awesome idea, and just execution is going to be 9/10 the law. So, is there a way we can get some information on the approach that they might take? And again, I'm far outside my scope to ever suggest that, I will dictate whether it's good or bad, but I'd be curious to know what the approach is.
Thank you. That's a very good question. I'll see what we can find out.
Well, if I can follow up on that, on next point, I think it's more general even, right? I quoted some statistics last time we talked that a third of teachers, college graduates in Columbia, not far from here, are, non-Caucasians. And then I look at our teacher score and I don't see much variety. So what I think would be helpful to have the March, I guess, right, Mrs. Sion, to sort of walk us through how they recruit, and if what are the sort of roadblocks? Why don't we have more diversity? Or anyway, the whole quality of teacher and the whole approach to the best teachers, because they are the most important thing we have in the district, right? And they are with us usually 20 years, I assume, plus. So
a lot, yeah. Long time. Yeah, at one time, I think that Darien teachers could send their own children to school in Darien, and that program stopped. But I wonder if that would be an effective recruiting tool, that people could say, if they're a teacher here, that then they're on the same schedule with their kids. They commute, I know sometimes it's hard for people to commute from far away, and if they could, have their kids in the same school district, I don't know if that's something that would be an attractive feature or not. But I will try to find out more about how they recruit and more about the teacher in residence program. Any other questions that people would like to have more information about?
Clara, that's a great point that you just made. It's been a major issue for a number of teachers, actually, who have to drive a really long distance. Yes. So great. Good point. Move it on.
We'll see. How about the question about, how long does it take a teacher to move through the steps? Did you want more information about that? Someone had said, how long does it take to get tenure? It does take 4 years unless the person has had tenure somewhere else. Are you satisfied with the answers about the step movement and how many people are, obviously we now know how many people are at each step. Do you need any more information about this section? Okay. All right. We also talked about whether there was enough IT help. Is everybody happy with the answers to those questions?
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm missing anybody, speak up, because we also had talked about the need for emotional support for the students, and perhaps remedial support after we have had so much time with COVID. I think we're still in agreement about that. I think Peter brought up the Holmes parking lot. I think that question was answered. I don't know if we'll learn any more about it. Okay, anything else here? You can always email me if you go home and think about this more. You can email me a question here and there if you like. I think that we also we've given this a lot of time, so doesn't mean that we won't have any more questions come up, but for now I think we've gone through this pretty well. Any other concerns or questions about anything else?
Can I just say, I was just gonna say, it's not a large number, but it's funny. The whole intramurals at DHS,
oh yeah,
I think we got an answer that it's like pick up volleyball and pick up basketball. If it exists, not one person at the high school knows about it. I have asked so many different people who have graduated, people who were there, people who have athletes, people who don't have athletes, and none of us have heard of it. So if people don't know it's there, granted it's only $4,000, then why is it even in the budget?
Okay. I think that somebody brought up at the Board of Ed meeting as a possible cut, the intramurals at the elementary school.
Yes.
Can
I jump on with Teresa a little bit on there? Not that, I mean, yes, I agree with Teresa. No one knows about these intramurals. But yes, the elementary intramurals, they never fully answered that question. I keep asking, is it only at one school? Is that 10,000 only at one school, which is, I think, what they said on the Board of Ed, which is why they were looking to cut it.
Yeah, so I think, Tara, it exists at the other schools and it's run by Darien After School. Where
Yeah,
is it?
so the other schools,
Yeah.
the parents are paying for it. That's the thing.
Right.
Right. So there's
And
only
one school-
$10,000 being put to one school.
It appears that that's the case, but we can confirm that.
Because they tried to last year make a motion at the end of the budget season to get rid of that, but they said, oh, it's too late, it's already closed. And it just, so it just year after year, this just keeps floating around where only one school is having intramurals paid for.
I have some insight on this. It's at homeschool. And the reason is we need to get personnel to run those programs. And homeschool and homeschool principal was able to get that. So I agree with you that it's got to be equity, and I think people would. This is a great program. Most of my boys doing it in the past, and if we can get 4 more teachers in other elementary schools to do these programs, I think that's the way to look at it. Rather than cutting, we should be looking at seeing if we could do more. Now it's in COVID, it's canceled and all that, but in normal times. But I think that's the answer. It is just one school right now, so we should probably ask the administration why is it not in the others, right? Rather than saying, well, why is it just in this one? So.
Okay, we can ask that too. All right, any other questions about the budget or any of the questions that were answered either, this week or in a previous meeting? Is everybody ready to move on? Okay, we have one more thing on the agenda, and that is to discuss community questions on school opening models. Does anybody want to comment on this? So I don't see anybody or hear anybody, so I'm going to say we're ready to leave this item. Is there any other business that we should discuss? Are we ready to call it a night here and adjourn? We've been here almost an hour.
Maybe Clara, can I one more thing? Sorry,
Yeah.
What's the sort of timetable from now on? Just so it's probably written somewhere, but just can you help me out? I know that tomorrow is a big day for the Board of E, right? They're making some decisions, and next week they're making decisions. What about for us?
Tomorrow is the public hearing, I believe, for the Board of Ed, assuming the weather cooperates. Right. And that's when various community groups, particularly the CDSP and parents, are going to come forward and make comments on what, programs that they, value a lot. So that would be something worth watching and seeing, where they stand. And then our next meeting is March 8th. But next Tuesday, the Board of Ed will vote, so not tomorrow. So I guess they're going to probably vote on the 9th, if I have this correct. And that will be right before the winter vacation. So that's the time
meeting, right? They call it. That's the cut no cut meeting. The
cut meeting would be. I don't know. Is Duke still here?
Yes,
it happened last week, right?
Why don't you answer?
The cut no cut meeting starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow is the tomorrow, and you're voting week later. Got it.
Correct.
Okay, but
appreciate it.
Tomorrow is the public hearing, though, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And the cut no cut would start after that,
Correct.
right? Okay, all right. So, any other questions about the budget or anything else that we've been discussing? Any other business? Okay, everybody, go ahead.
Sorry, you'd sent an email a few days back about how you were asked by someone from the Darien Times to comment on someone's social media comment. Are there guidelines on how we should, whether or not, because we are on the board, whether we should even comment in social media platforms on stuff? Is there guidance on that, or just use like proper civility and leave it at that, and then just, I don't know. I felt kind of bad that you were having to vet, reporters about comments that were made.
Speaking?
Okay, this is Megan.
That's
Megan.
Meg.
Oh, hi. Oh,
Barbara.
thank you. Okay,
Okay,
just
okay.
checking. I didn't know if you were a board member or just one of our committee people. And just, excuse me. Just
She's our
wondered.
secretary. Okay, so
Got
I
it.
don't think the newspaper ever
We're
used
cool.
the comment that I gave them, and maybe this will all go away. I don't think we should be precluded from making comments. It's always a good idea to be polite. But no, I don't think there are any particular rules. Just that, if you represent other people, it's not a good idea to bring your RTM role into personal comments. So I guess the only thing I was interested in doing was saying that the comments didn't reflect the opinion of the Education Committee. You're certainly free to make comments about anything you want, but it's better not to link the comments about personal things or, things that have not been vetted by the committee. It's better not to link those to the committee. Does that take care of
Good
it?
point.
Don't worry about the newspaper and me. I mean, we all get along, and I didn't feel harassed or anything like that. Okay, so don't worry about that. All right, are we done here? Can we move on?
Make some raging statements across multiple platforms, just blanket statements. You would discourage that practice? I just want to be clear.
I would discourage people saying that they're a member of the Education Committee and making a comment. If they want to say, something about other things, it's okay. But I would just say that there shouldn't be a connection between your work here and your comments unless it's something that we've discussed and voted on.
And for those of you who are not on video, I was fully sarcastic just now, and I realized that probably didn't translate so well. So I'm well aware of how to keep proper decorum on social media platforms. So
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. Yeah, but you're right. It's funny when you can't see. One day we may get together in person. It'll be really different, I'm sure. Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn? Are we ready? It's about 7:58 p.m. And a second. And Carolina. Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Thank you again for everybody. Thank you. And thank you to Brian Seeley, our tech expert.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Great job.